In this video, I will try and provide you with a better connection, or at least in my opinion, it's going to be a better connection for a shear wall that's going to have hold downs that are going to connect through the floor to the building foundation. And I've used this method before, but since I found a better method, I probably will not be using this method again unless it was specifically specified by a structural engineer. Because I would rather connect the 4x4 to the building foundation, so simply lower the hold down and the post instead of having it like this. And one of the problems you're going to have if you do something like this and you use the anchor bolt required by the manufacturer of the hold down will be that it might not be embedded into the concrete far enough if you actually do it this way, which you're not going to. Most people are not going to do something like this because it's not going to meet the manufacturer's requirements. So that what they'll do instead is lower the anchor bolt so that it does meet the manufacturer's installation instructions, and then add a coupler or a coupling to it. However, you will need to check with the manufacturer to make sure that you can use a coupler for something like this. I would imagine with larger hold downs, you might not be able to use a connector. So make sure that you run this by your structural engineer also. Don't just rely on the manufacturer. And yes, I've seen problems created by using couplers on the jobs. So just don't rely on the manufacturer for something like this. Check with the engineer whose name is on the building plans. And again, do not get a verbal okay from this. Make sure that you have something in writing. Otherwise, you are going to be paying for any repairs and not the person who okayed this over the phone. Another thing you might be able to do, and this might be on your building plans as another alternative also, would be to use a longer connector like an all-thread that's going to have something like this on the bottom. You might have a nut on the top with a large square washer and another nut on the bottom that can be firmly embedded into the concrete. And again, I got to stress this. This might not be an approved construction method for your project. However, if it is, make sure that you add a block, something like this, in the floor framing to get some additional structural support for the hold down going through the floor framing. Next up, let's go ahead and take a look at the method I like the best. And again, that would be running the 4x4 down to the top of the sill plate that will be sitting directly on top of the building foundation. And with this method here, you're not going to need a coupling or the all-thread. And in my opinion, you're going to create a stronger shear wall because now you're not going to be relying on a load transfer through the floor framing. Now keep in mind that something like this is going to be a little more difficult for the framing contractor to build and might require a few more dollars. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to figure out the cost difference between doing something like this on a project that might have a lot of hold downs. Another thing you're going to need to do will be to add a block, and that block should extend a little bit past both sides of the 4x4. And let's go ahead and take away the wall framing plates to give you an idea of what something like this is going to look like before you lay out and frame the walls. And in some situations, even though I've never ran into this, you might need to use both methods. Connect one to the foundation, one to the floor framing in order to avoid a specific problem you're going to run into on your project. Now, another thing that's going to add a few more dollars to your project will be the longer shear panel or the additional amount of shear panel required to extend the shear wall all the way down to the building foundation. And as always, if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comment area and I will answer them as soon as possible.